My name is Florence Cruz, and I'm 32 years old. At 8:15 p.m., my grandfather was rushed to the hospital. My father refused to watch my autistic son so I could sit by my grandfather's bedside, while my mother brushed me off, saying they were too busy packing for a trip with my brother. She called me a nuisance, like I was an eyesore that should been stashed away in a storage closet a long time ago. I just stood there, helpless, as she snapped over the phone. "Flo, you're such a nuisance. Your grandfather has nurses to take care of him. Figure your own life out." So, I did. I hired an emergency sitter out of my own pocket and stayed by my grandfather's bed for 7 straight days and nights. A week later, when he was finally stabilized, my parents finally decided to grace us with their presence. They didn't come to check on him. They showed up demanding their slice of his $10 million estate like it was their birthright, while my mother openly complained about having to cut her trip short, claiming she'd wasted $5,000 for nothing. Right after that, my grandfather called a family meeting and announced a major decision. It was only in that exact moment that my mother realized just how expensive her trip to Mexico was actually going to cost her. But I'm jumping ahead. Let me take you back to where everything started. When it comes to my family, you have to understand 2 fundamental rules. Rule number 1, Brandon gets everything. Rule number 2, Florence gets the leftovers. My brother Brandon graduated from USC back in 2012. Our parents paid for every single dime, spending $180,000 on his tuition, living expenses, and whatever else he wanted. They threw him a graduation party that cost more than my entire car. I graduated from Arizona State in 2015 with $67,000 in student loan debt. It took me 9 full years to clear that, paying off the last installment in 2024. My parents did show up to my graduation, but they only stayed for an hour before ducking out early to attend a dinner party celebrating Brandon's new promotion. In 2021, Brandon bought a house in North Scottsdale, a notoriously wealthy neighborhood, 4 bedrooms, a private pool, and direct views of the mountains. My parents handed him $250,000 in cash just for the down payment. At his housewarming party, my dad stood up with a champagne glass in hand and proudly announced to the room, "This is the best investment we've ever made." Fast forward to March 2024. I asked them to lend me $3,000 to buy an AAC device for my son, Noah. It's a specialized tablet that allows my non-verbal autistic son to communicate by pressing picture buttons. Medical insurance refused to cover it. I had been saving for 11 months, squeezing $255 out of my budget every single month, but I was still short. I sent my dad an email. "Loan request Noah's communication device." 6 hours later, he sent back a single line, "Flo, we can't keep covering your mistakes. Learn to manage your finances." 3 days later, my mother posted pictures on social media from Napa Valley. It was a wine tasting trip for her, Brandon, and his wife, Amber. I looked up the winery online. The premium tasting package was $380 per person. They brought Brandon's kids along and put everyone up in a 5-star hotel with a pool, a spa, and room service. I took a screenshot of that email and saved it in a hidden folder on my phone. I named that folder Evidence. I didn't even know why I did it at the time. My gut just told me to keep a record. Over the last 2 years, my parents and Brandon's family went on at least 5 vacations together. Turks and Caicos, Napa Valley, weekend getaways at Scottsdale resorts, a river cruise in Europe, and Cabo San Lucas in Mexico. A conservative estimate put the total cost well over $65,000. The number of times they invited me? 0. It wasn't because I couldn't afford a flight. It was because Noah might not handle the plane well, or his dietary restrictions are too complicated, or there isn't enough room in the villa. The excuses changed every time, but the underlying message was always crystal clear. Brandon was an asset worth investing in, while I was just a burdensome obligation. My mother posted vacation photos in the family group chat constantly. There were 23 people in that chat. Sunsets, cocktails, Brandon's kids building sandcastles on the beach. The caption was always the same. So grateful for this beautiful family time. After the third trip, I stopped replying altogether and just left the messages on read. She never even noticed my silence. Noah is 5 years old. He has level 2 autism and is nonverbal. His therapy expenses run about $890 every month. Insurance only covers $320, leaving me to pay the rest out of pocket. I work 50 hours a week as a pediatric occupational therapist, earning $52,000 a year. After taxes, rent, utilities, groceries, Noah's therapy, and his specialized daycare costs, there is practically nothing left. Some months, I literally had to choose between paying his therapy copay or buying my own groceries. In July 2024, I reached out to my parents again. Not for a handout, but for a loan. $2,670 to cover Noah's therapy copays for 3 months, promising to pay every penny back by December. My dad texted back, "Flo, we can't keep covering your mistakes. You chose to be a single mom, so you need to manage your budget." I stared at that message for 11 straight minutes before replying, "I'm not asking for an endless safety net. I'm asking to borrow $2,670. You just spent $12,000 in Napa Valley." 48 seconds later, his reply came back, "That's different. That was a planned expense." I didn't write back. I just screenshotted the conversation and dropped it into the folder. 11 messages, saved, timestamped, and stored away. 3 days after that, they posted more photos from their Napa trip. My mom tagged Brandon with the caption, "Our successful son. So proud of you." The post got 43 likes. Nobody asked about Noah. Nobody asked about me. 2 weeks before my grandfather's stroke, I hit a real crisis. I had to attend a mandatory professional training at Phoenix Medical Center on a Saturday, from 9 in the morning until 1 in the afternoon. 4 hours. Missing it meant a $250 rescheduling fee and risking my clinical license. On Thursday, I called my mom and left a voicemail. "Hi, Mom. I have mandatory training this Saturday morning. Could you watch Noah from 9 to 1? I'll bring over his food, his schedule, and everything he needs. Please." 6 hours later, she texted back, "Can't. I have personal business to take care of. Ask your neighbor." I ended up paying my neighbor $60 to watch Noah so I wouldn't risk my license. That was $60 I couldn't afford to lose. Later, I found out what her personal business actually was. She and my dad went out for manicures and pedicures, spending $85 at the salon. I saw the picture of her nails on her Instagram story with the caption, "Saturday Self-Care." I didn't say a word. I didn't start a fight. I just made another entry in my mental ledger. Once again, they sidelined me for their own amusement. I had no idea that this mental ledger would soon turn into evidence. Noah wakes up at 6:45 every morning on the dot. Not 6:40, not 6:50, exactly 6:45. His alarm plays the same instrumental version of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. It's played that exact song for 127 consecutive days. If the alarm fails to go off, he panics. If a different song plays, he goes into a severe 45-minute meltdown, rocking back and forth, humming, and completely shutting out the world. Breakfast is at 7 in the morning, with a margin of error of no more than 3 minutes. Any delay ruins his entire day. Every single morning, he eats the exact same thing, Quaker maple and brown sugar instant oatmeal. It has to be that precise flavor, heated in the microwave for exactly 3 minutes. I have to lay his clothes out the night before. Blue shirt, gray pants. If I hand him the wrong color, he loses control of his emotions. Last Tuesday, I accidentally picked up a navy shirt instead of his usual royal blue. He screamed at his breakfast bowl for 38 minutes, and he couldn't even go to daycare that day. My parents labeled this behavior as control issues. I called it survival. Noah's AAC device has a button for blue shirt. Some mornings, he'll press it 17 times. Torch. The synthesized voice repeats, blue shirt, blue shirt, blue shirt. I kneel down to get on his eye level and say, yeah, buddy, blue shirt today, just like the schedule says. He won't look at me, but his shoulders visibly relax. Order is maintained, and his world feels safe again. Noah's nervous system doesn't process things the way ours does. Torch. Things that wouldn't bother you or me feel like a direct assault to him. Fluorescent lights give him a severe migraine after 12 minutes of exposure, causing him to cover his eyes, rock back and forth, and sometimes throw up. Sudden, loud noises over 68 decibels send him over the edge. Torch. Once, a fire alarm went off at the grocery store at 85 decibels, and he had a 4-hour meltdown. He wouldn't eat or sleep, just curled up in a corner wrapped in his weighted blanket. That blanket has to weigh exactly 12 pounds. One time, while his regular blanket was in the wash, I tried giving him an 11-pound one, and he noticed immediately, refusing to touch it. Torch. Even an unexpected touch from family members feels like an electric shock to him. That applies to me too. Before hugging him, I have to give him a heads up. Noah, hug in 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then I touch his shoulder first and wait for him to lean in on his own. My grandfather understood this. Torch. During a family dinner once, he leaned over and softly asked me, why doesn't he like hugs? It's not that he doesn't like them, I explained. It's just that his nervous system processes touch like static electricity amplified 100 times. Torch. Grandfather nodded, and from that day on, he always gave Noah a warning before interacting with him. Noah Bear, Grandpa is going to sit next to you now, okay? Noah wouldn't answer, but he wouldn't run away either. That was his version of saying yes. My mother, on the other hand, never learned. Torch. She would grab him unexpectedly and pull him into a tight embrace, saying things like, he needs to learn to accept affection. Noah would scream, and every single time, she would accuse me of making a fuss over nothing. My grandfather saw all of it. He began taking notes during those dinners, writing things down in a small notebook. Torch. I didn't pay much attention to it back then, though I really should have. Noah doesn't speak with his voice, but that doesn't mean he has nothing to say. The AAC device gave him a voice through a screen filled with picture buttons. Torch. He presses hungry, and the device says, I am hungry. He presses pain, and it says, it hurts. When he strings a sequence of buttons together, he's telling me he wants the blue truck instead of the red one, or that he wants to go outside, or that he loves me. That device cost me $2,800. Insurance refused to pay, calling it non-essential technology. Torch. I saved for 11 months, setting aside $255 every month, $52 every week. I skipped lunches, wore old clothes, and drove on bald tires just to buy it in April 2024. At a family dinner in May, Noah pressed 3 buttons. The device voiced, love you. I broke down crying right there at the dinner table. He had never said those words before. Torch. Not out loud, not on the device. Never. My mother was busy boasting about Brandon's latest promotion and didn't notice at all. But my grandfather did. He reached over and squeezed my hand tightly, not saying a word, just holding on. Noah knows 89 words now. He can express full sentences, ask questions, and share his feelings. Torch. Last week he told me that loud noises at school made him feel sad. He's never been able to share something like that with me before. Yet my parents dismissed it as unnecessary technology, saying kids his age ought to be speaking on their own, and accusing me of spoiling him. Torch. At that same dinner, my mother bluntly remarked, maybe if you pushed him harder instead of buying him these toys, he'd be talking by now. I cut her off. It's not a toy, it's his voice. We never needed any devices in our day. You spoke just fine when you were little. I am not him, and he is not me. He has a right to be heard, I fired back. Torch. She rolled her eyes and turned away to keep talking about Brandon. Noah hit the buttons on his screen. Thank you, Mama. I wasn't sure if he fully understood what he was thanking me for, but I understood. He felt heard. For the first time in his life, someone was actually listening to him. Within a 30-mile radius, there was only one facility equipped to handle Level 2 autism. Bright Futures Autism Center. It cost $560 a week, coming out to $2,400 a month. The staff there were trained in meltdown de-escalation, sensory diets, and AAC support. They understood that when Noah covered his ears, he wasn't acting out. He was protecting himself. I put him on the waitlist in 2022. After 11 months of waiting, we finally secured a spot in 2023. I cried tears of relief the day they called. During enrollment, the center director clearly explained the policy to me. If Noah misses more than 3 consecutive days, we have to give his spot away. We have 47 families on our wait list with an average wait time of 9 months. I'm so sorry, but this policy is absolute. I signed the paperwork, fully understanding the rule. 3 days. That was the line. I never imagined I would be forced to break it. Tuesday, August 24, 2025. Early morning, 6:15 a.m., grandfather's housekeeper, Maria, arrived for work. She had been working for him for 18 years and had her own key to the gate. She entered through the kitchen door and found him collapsed on the floor. The left side of his body was paralyzed, his face was drooping, and he was desperately trying to speak, but no sound would come out. She dialed 911 at 6:17 a.m. That call recording was later submitted as evidence. He's breathing, but he's not responding. One side of his face is drooping. I think it's a stroke. Please hurry, please. The ambulance arrived 11 minutes later at 6:28 a.m. Paramedics later noted that those 11 minutes saved his life. Maria called my mother first. It went straight to voicemail. She called me second, and I picked up on the very first ring. St. Joseph's Hospital Intensive Care Unit, room 2309. They admitted my grandfather at 6:52 a.m. and immediately initiated the emergency stroke protocol. A clot-busting medication called TPA had to be administered within 90 minutes of symptom onset to work. They finished the injection at 7:15 a.m., exactly 60 minutes after he collapsed. The doctor said that window of time gave him a fighting chance to survive. Dr. Patel found me in the hallway at 7:45 a.m. I was still in my pajamas, holding Noah. I had scooped him out of bed, put him in the car, and driven straight to the hospital. "Are you his medical power of attorney?" the doctor asked. "No, my mother is, but she isn't here yet. We need family present. Emergency decisions might have to be made at any moment." "I am here," I said firmly. "I'm not leaving." He looked at Noah, then back at me, and nodded. "All right, let me know the moment your mother arrives." She never showed up. 20 minutes later, a nurse came by to request emergency contacts. I provided my parents' names, phone numbers, and current location. They're in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, staying at a resort. The nurse's expression didn't change, but she wrote it down. I watched as she drew 2 thick lines under that location. Later, I learned that entry became a key piece of evidence. I was supposed to drop Noah off at daycare at 8:30 a.m., but it was already 8:15 a.m. I was standing in the hospital parking lot with a hungry 5-year-old who was starting to hum from stress. I called the daycare to explain the situation. The director was sympathetic but firm. "I understand what you're going through, Florence, but I have to remind you of our policy. 3 consecutive absences. If Noah misses 4 days in a row, we have to forfeit his spot." "I understand." "How long do you think you'll need?" I looked through the glass doors at my grandfather in the ICU, hooked up to tubes. "I don't know." I called the Emergency Respite Care Service, an agency I had used twice before when I was completely out of options. $55 an hour, 4-hour minimum. "We have a caregiver available starting at 11 a.m. "I'll take it." 4 hours, $220. I called my neighbor next. She agreed to cover the gap from 8:40 to 11 a.m. $40 an hour. 2.5 hours, another $100. Total childcare cost for just 1 day, $320. My savings account held $3,800. That was my emergency fund, built over 11 grueling months, saving $50 here and $30 there, and now the emergency had arrived. At 7:52 a.m., I sent a message to the family group chat. The Cruz family, 23 members. Grandfather had a severe stroke this morning. He's in ICU room 2309 at St. Joseph's. The doctor says the next 72 hours are critical. I'll be staying at the hospital with him. Replies poured in quickly. Aunt Rachel, oh my gosh, praying for him. Uncle Tom, keep us updated. Cousin Julie, I'm on my way. Brandon, wow, hope he's okay. I waited for my parents to respond. 1 hour passed, 2 hours, 3 hours. At 1:48 p.m., nearly 6 hours after my message, my mother finally replied, oh dear, praying for Dad. We're in Cabo for Brandon's family trip and flying back next Wednesday. Keep us updated. Love you. I read that text 3 times. Flying back next Wednesday. Today was only Tuesday. Wednesday was 8 days away. The doctor explicitly said the next 72 hours were critical. 3 days, and they were staying in Cabo for 8 more days. I put my phone down without replying. A cold realization settled in my chest, a total unwavering clarity. I arrived at the hospital Tuesday morning at 8:40 a.m. and stayed until 2 a.m. Wednesday. 17 hours and 20 minutes straight. I slept on a chair in the family waiting room for 4 hours and 15 minutes before returning to his bedside at 7 a.m. Wednesday. The cycle repeated. The nurses began to recognize me. By day 2, Nurse Jenna brought me an extra blanket without me even asking. By day 3, she handed me a granola bar from her own lunch. Honey, when was the last time you ate? I had some coffee. Coffee doesn't count as food around here. I actually started crying over a granola bar. Thank you, nurse. Thank you so much. Where's the rest of your family? The ones in Cabo? She didn't say another word, just nodded and walked back to the station. I watched her write a lengthy note in the chart. She underlined something, glanced back at me, and turned around. I had no idea at the time that she was documenting everything, building a record. By the second day, I had to assemble a patchwork system. Emergency caregivers could only work up to 8 hours a day, but I needed to be at the hospital for 16 to 18 hours. Morning, neighbor, 4 hours at $40 an hour equals $160. Afternoon, caregiver, 8 hours at $38 an hour equals $304. Evening, neighbor's teenage daughter, 4 hours at $25 an hour equals $100. Daily total, $564. Day 1, $320. Day 2, $564. Day 3, $564. Day 4, $564. Running total, $2,012. I pulled up my savings account balance on my phone, $3,800. 14 months of savings, every spare cent. I did the math. At this rate, I'd be completely broke in 3 days. I opened my notes app and typed it out like an equation. Savings. $3,800. Days until broke? 3. I stared at the screen. Then I texted my father. Text 1. Day 2, 9:15 a.m. Dad, grandfather is in critical condition. Can you and mom come back early? I need help watching Noah so I can stay at the hospital. Status. Read at 9:47 a.m. No reply. Text 3. Day 3, 2:30 p.m. Dad, please. I'm spending $564 a day on childcare. I just need you to come back and watch him for 2 days. I'll handle everything else. Status. Read at 3:10 p.m. No reply. Text 6. Day 4, 7 a.m. I'll pay the $500 flight change fees. Please, I can't do this alone anymore. Status. Read at 8:22 a.m. No reply. Text 8. Day 4, 11:15 p.m. Dad, I'm begging you. Status. Read at 11:47 p.m. No reply. Over 72 hours, I sent 8 texts, all marked read, 0 replies. I looked up the flight change fees myself. Alaska Airlines, Cabo to Phoenix, same-day change, $1,500 for 2 tickets. I had just enough cash to cover it, and I was willing to pay if they'd just say yes. But they never did. By day 5, I stopped texting and called directly. Friday, 10:30 a.m. My dad actually picked up. I heard resort music, laughter, and ice clinking in glasses in the background. Flo, what is it? Porch. We're eating lunch. Dad, I sent you 8 texts. Grandfather is still in critical condition. I need you to come back for just 2 days to watch Noah so I can. This trip was paid for in advance, non-refundable. Do you realize what that means? We can't just pack up and leave. I'll pay the change fee, $1,500, I have the money. It's not about the money, Florence. Porch. It's the principle. You chose to have a special needs child, and you chose to be a single mom. Those are your responsibilities. We are retired, and we have the right to relax and enjoy ourselves. I felt something shatter deep inside my chest. A boundary I didn't even know I still had left to break. You'd seriously choose a margarita over your grandson's well-being? Don't be so dramatic. Porch. Your grandfather has nurses looking after him. You need to learn how to handle stress better. We'll go see him when we get back. Click. He hung up. I sat in the waiting room with the phone pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone. Nurse Jenna walked by and saw my face. Are you all right? No, I whispered. She didn't press for details, just squeezed my shoulder gently and kept moving. Porch. On Wednesday, day 3 at 2:47 p.m., an email arrived from Bright Futures Autism Center. Subject. Noah's attendance. Action required. Dear Florence, we understand you are dealing with a family emergency. However, according to our attendance policy signed on March 15, 2023, consecutive absences reaching 4 days results in automatic unenrollment. Tomorrow will mark day 4. Porch. We currently have 51 families on our wait list with an average wait time of 9 months. We cannot hold spots during extended absences. Please confirm by 5 p.m. today if Noah will return tomorrow, or we must release his spot. We sincerely apologize for bringing this up at such a time. Director Susan Welch. I read it 4 times. Porch. If I said Noah was returning tomorrow, I'd have to leave my grandfather alone during his most critical 72-hour window. If I lost the spot, Noah would lose 11 months of therapeutic progress and sit on a waitlist for another 9 months, putting us right back at square one. I looked at my phone. It was 4:38 p.m. I had 22 minutes to decide. I chose my grandfather. Porch. At 4:52 p.m. I replied, Susan, I understand. Please release Noah's spot. Thank you for everything you've done for him. Sent. I walked into the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and cried silently for 6 minutes. Then I washed my face, walked back into my grandfather's room, and took his hand. He squeezed back weakly, but he was there. Day 5, 11 p.m. Porch. I walked out to my car just to grab my phone charger. I sat in the driver's seat, didn't turn on the engine, and just started sobbing. The kind of painful, full-body cry that makes your ribs ache and steals your breath. Someone knocked on the window. It was the hospital security guard, his name tag reading Luis. Mom, I've seen you out here every night this week. Do you need help? Porch. I shook my head, unable to find my voice. What's going on? The words tumbled out in broken fragments. My family won't help. My son lost his daycare spot. My grandfather might die. I just needed someone to show up, just once. Luis pulled a bottle of water from his belt and passed it through the cracked window. I'm so sorry. I really am. He paused. Porch. For what it's worth, you showed up. That matters. I took the water, holding it tight without drinking. A stranger's kindness meant more than anything my parents had given me. That empty water bottle still sits on my kitchen counter as a reminder. Day 4, Thursday, 2:45 p.m. Other relatives began arriving. Porch. Aunt Rachel flew in from California. Uncle Tom drove up from Colorado, and cousins from Texas arrived. By 3 p.m., 12 family members packed the second-floor ICU waiting area, hugging, crying, and checking on my grandfather's condition. Aunt Rachel pulled me aside. Where's your mother? Where's Patricia? In Cabo. She gets back next week. What? Porch. Her father is in the ICU, and she's on vacation with your dad and Brandon? Uncle Tom overheard. She couldn't fly back early? I asked. I said softly. She said no. Silence fell over the room as 11 people stared at me in disbelief. Cousin Julie stepped forward and whispered, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I lied. She didn't buy it. Arch. She pulled out her phone and quietly activated her voice recorder app. "Just in case," she whispered. I didn't realize what she meant at the time. At 3:15 p.m., I stepped out of the room to try one last time. I dialed my mother's cell phone. Voicemail. I called the resort, Cabo Princess, and had them transfer me to her room. After 4 rings, she picked up. Porch. I heard mariachi music, people laughing, and ice clinking in the background. "Flo, sweetie, what's wrong?" "Mom, everyone is here. They're all asking for you. Grandfather is still in critical condition. Could you please just come back for 2 days?" "Flo, we've talked about this. We're on vacation. Brandon's family is here, and the kids are having a great time. Porch, we can't just pack up and leave." Her voice was slurred, clearly intoxicated by the pool bar. "Mom, I'm not asking you to cancel the trip forever. Just 48 hours. I need help with Noah. I've already spent over $2,000 on." "Flo, enough. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. Put me on speaker. I want everyone to hear this." My heart sank. "Mom, I don't think that's..." Arch. "Put me on speaker." I walked back into the waiting room under the gaze of 12 relatives. 2 nurses stood 15 feet away at the station. The hospital chaplain sat in the corner, and 3 other families occupied the common area. I held up my phone and pressed speaker. My mother's voice boomed out at 78% volume before I could turn it down. Porch. She didn't check if I was ready. She just unloaded. "Florence, you are such a nuisance." That word echoed across the waiting room. Nuisance. We spent $12,000 on this trip. Your grandfather has nurses and a professional medical team. You don't need to hover over him every second. That's what hospitals are for. I froze, holding the phone in my hand. Porch. Honestly, if you can't even handle taking care of Noah on your own, maybe you need to reevaluate your life choices. Brandon's kids certainly don't cause this much chaos. Aunt Rachel's jaw dropped in complete shock. "We are not cutting our vacation short just because you can't manage your own obligations. Figure it out yourself. We'll see your grandfather when we get back next Wednesday." Porch. I'm sure he'll still be there. Dead silence. For 11 full seconds I counted. "Got it," I said quietly and hung up. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. An unrelated family sitting nearby awkwardly got up and left, unable to endure the suffocating cringe. At the station, Nurse Jenna wrote furiously for 47 seconds, her pen moving rapidly. Porch. She drew 2 heavy lines on her paper, looked up at me, and silently mouthed, "I'm sorry." Another 19 seconds of absolute silence passed before Aunt Rachel walked over and wrapped her arms around me. I collapsed into her embrace, shaking uncontrollably without making a sound. "That was so cruel," she whispered. "That was truly cruel. She's always like this," I mumbled. Porch. "No, this isn't normal. This is completely unacceptable," Uncle Tom said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Good Lord." Cousin Julie was still recording. Her phone rested on her lap, the audio file running for a total of 7 minutes and 18 seconds. Reverend Miles, the hospital chaplain, approached me. "Would you like to talk in private?" I shook my head. "No, thank you." Porch. I turned and walked down the hallway toward room 2309. I pushed the door open, which had been left cracked about 4 inches for the nurses. I hadn't realized how easily sound traveled inside. My grandfather was awake, his eyes wide open, staring right at me. I thought he had been sleeping, but I was wrong. I sat in the chair beside his bed and held his hand in silence. Porch. He didn't say anything either. 90 seconds passed before he gave my hand a weak, deliberate squeeze. He spoke in a faint, raspy whisper, his first clear words since the stroke 4 days ago. I heard. My heart stopped. "What?" He squeezed again. "Your mother. The phone call. Nuisance." Tears welled up in his eyes. "I'm sorry. You don't need to apologize. You did nothing wrong." "I did." Porch. "I raised her. I failed." "No, you didn't fail. She did. You taught her better. She chose not to listen." He closed his eyes as a single tear rolled down his cheek. Then he squeezed my hand 3 times. It was our secret code from when I was a child. "I love you. I squeezed his hand 3 times in return. He drifted off to sleep, holding my hand, and I stayed until midnight. Orch. I had no idea then what his words I heard truly meant, or the steep price my mother would eventually pay for them. But my grandfather knew exactly what he was doing. To understand the full picture, I have to take you back 26 months before the stroke. November 23, 2023. Orch. Thanksgiving Day at Brandon's house, the 3,200 square foot, 4-bedroom home in an affluent North Scottsdale neighborhood that my parents helped him buy with a $250,000 down payment. During dinner, my mother brought up the house no less than 6 times in front of 32 guests. Orch. The meal was custom catered by Whole Foods, costing $3,800, and my mother made sure every single guest knew how expensive it was. The table arrangement was immaculate. Amber played the flawless hostess, and my parents practically beamed with pride. Meanwhile, at 30 years old, I was seated at the kids' table with Noah. Orch. At 3:30 p.m., Brandon stood up to raise a toast. To Mom and Dad, thank you for believing in us and investing in our future. Everyone clapped. Just 2 months earlier, I had begged them for a $3,000 loan for Noah's AAC communication device, only to be turned down flat. But at this picture-perfect Thanksgiving table, nobody brought that up. Orch. At 3:47 p.m., Uncle Jim suddenly let out a deafening shout at the TV showing the NFL game. Touchdown. A sudden 95-decibel blast of noise. I saw Noah's face change instantly, giving me barely 8 seconds to react. He lost control and knocked his plate onto the floor, shattering the $32 Pottery Barn bone china, a detail Brandon made sure to remind me of later. Orch. Noah covered his ears tightly and started screaming, a high-pitched, continuous sound that cut right through the laughter in the dining room. I grabbed his hand immediately. Come on, buddy. Let's go to a quiet room. I guided him into Brandon's guest bedroom, shut the door, pulled out his weighted blanket, and tried to soothe him using his AAC device. But nothing worked. Orch. The meltdown lasted 18 full minutes. Even through the closed door, I could hear the voices from the dining room clearly. What is wrong with him? Can't she control her own son? He completely ruined dinner. Then came my mother's voice, so loud it easily penetrated the wooden door. Florence, normal children do not scream like that. You're entirely too soft on him. Orch. Next was my father. Maybe if you gave him some proper discipline instead of constantly spoiling him. Brandon chimed in, Amber's kids would never act like this. While Amber lowered her voice, it was still loud enough to hear clearly. Honestly, this is so embarrassing. I was lying on the floor, curled up next to my 5-year-old son, trying to help him catch his breath. Orch. During those 18 minutes, I counted 11 negative comments directed right at us. At 4:05 p.m., the meltdown finally subsided. Exhausted, Noah fell asleep on the guest bedroom bed. I picked up his 40-pound body and carried him out. 32 pairs of eyes stared at me at once. The dining room was empty. Everyone had moved to the living room for dessert. Orch. My mother gave a fake smile and said, well, that was quite a scene. Is he quiet now? He's sleeping? I replied coldly. My father jumped in. You know, there are plenty of behavioral modification programs specifically for kids like him. You really ought to look into them. I was just so tired. He is in therapy, I said, looking at them. It costs $890 a month. Orch, I asked you for help. You said no, my mother frowned. We're not made of money, Florence. In that moment, something deep inside me completely snapped. You just spent $3,800 on this dinner. You gave Brandon $250,000 to buy this house. And I asked you for $3,000. Orch. $3,000 to buy my son a device so he can have a voice. My mother's face immediately turned cold. That's different. Brandon is a worthwhile investment. He's building a career and a family. You, on the other hand, are just barely getting by. Barely getting by? I'm raising a special needs child completely on my own, on a therapist's meager salary. And what about you? Orch, you're going on European river cruises. "Florence, stop shouting and watch your tone," my father barked. It was too late. Tears were streaming down my face in front of 32 people. I grabbed my purse, picked up sleeping Noah, and walked straight out the door. Nobody offered to help. Nobody offered to hold my son. Nobody followed me out. Porch. 32 people just watched in silence as I carried a sleeping 40-pound child across the living room, out the front door and down the driveway. At 4:15 p.m., I sat in my car, trying to turn the ignition key. My hands were shaking too violently. The passenger door suddenly opened. My grandfather climbed in. "Don't start the car just yet. Take a deep breath." Porch. We sat in the car for 22 minutes. At first, he didn't say a word, just sat there quietly. Then he spoke. "What they said about you is wrong. You know that, right?" "They're my parents," I choked out. "They were supposed to what? Love me. They do love you. But they don't see you," my grandfather sighed. "They only see what they wish you were." Porch. After a long pause, his tone became remarkably serious. "I'm going to change a few things, Flo. Some legal matters. You'll understand later, but right now I need you to trust me." I looked at him through tear-stained eyes. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I sat on the federal bench for 28 years. Do you know what I learned? People show you who they really are through their actions. Porch. Your mother just showed you. Your father showed you. Brandon showed you too. Believe them when they show you who they are. But their family is a verb. It depends on what you do, not who you were born to. What you did for Noah today is more than what they've done for you in 30 years combined." I started crying again. "I don't know how much longer I can handle this alone." Porch. "You won't have to handle it alone anymore. I promise." "What does that actually mean?" "It means I see you, and I'm going to make sure you are legally, financially, and permanently protected." He leaned over to hug me, then stepped out of the car and walked back toward Brandon's house. I watched his retreating back. Porch. At the time, I had no idea he was heading straight inside to call his estate attorney. Monday, November 27, 2023. Downtown Phoenix, law offices of Huang and Associates, 12th floor. Retired federal judge Arthur Brennan sat across from attorney Mitchell Huang. He brought 11 pages of documentation with him. Porch. The documents detailed the financial support given to Brandon, a cumulative $430,000. They listed the record of rejections toward Florence, 7 documented requests totaling $18,500. They outlined the schedule of family vacations that excluded Florence, 11 trips over 3 years. Porch. Attorney Huang reviewed the paperwork and looked up at my grandfather. "Arthur, are you certain about this? Once a family inheritance dispute begins, it gets extremely ugly. I am not creating a dispute. I am establishing protection," my grandfather said, his gaze firm. "Florence is the only one who shows up when it matters. Porch. I want to ensure that if, or when, I can no longer care for myself, her sacrifices are accounted for. This type of morality clause is exceptionally rare. It requires specific triggers. I know my daughter all too well. If I suffer a medical crisis, she will be in Cabo, in Tuscany, in Bali, anywhere except by my side. Meanwhile, Florence will stand guard over me alone. Porch. I want every bit of this on the record. What if your intuition is wrong? If I'm wrong, the clause will never be triggered, and Patricia will inherit her share as originally planned. But if I'm right, Florence will receive everything." Attorney Huang drafted the amendment to the will, totaling 18 pages. Section 7, subsection C. The morality clause. Porch. Exactly 347 words. Every single legal loophole was closed. On January 8, 2024, my grandfather signed it. Witnesses: Attorney Mitchell Huang, Paralegal Dana Cortez, and Notary Public Rebecca Lin. The will was completely revised, and I had no idea. In March 2018, 6 months after my grandmother passed away, my grandfather had drafted a standard will. Porch. The distribution plan was simple and fair. 40% to his daughter, my mother Patricia, amounting to $3.28 million. 30% to his son, Uncle James, amounting to $2.46 million. 30% donated to the Arizona Children's Hospital, amounting to $2.46 million. Total estate value, $8.2 million. Attorney Huang had referred to it as a textbook distribution. Your daughter receives the largest share under the expectation that she will serve as your primary caregiver. My grandfather trusted her at the time, believing she would step up if anything happened. That was in 2018. Before Thanksgiving 2023. Before he saw her true colors inside that car. After Thanksgiving, my grandfather spent 6 weeks fine-tuning that clause with Attorney Huang. Every word was chosen with care, every phrase meticulously calculated. Section 7, subsection C, the morality clause. I have to read the exact wording to you, because it is vital. Any beneficiary who fails to provide reasonable, substantial family support to another family member, demonstrating a documented urgent need during a period when the testator suffers a severe medical incapacitation, requiring hospitalization exceeding 48 hours, as substantiated by medical records, financial expenditures, or credible witness testimony, shall forfeit their entire inheritance, or under this will. The clause continued. The forfeited share shall be transferred in its entirety to the family member, who bears the primary burden of the testator's care and incidental family needs. Substantial support is defined as, but not limited to, personal presence, respite care, childcare, financial assistance, or logistical coordination. And the most decisive line was this: reasonable refusal must be substantiated by medical disability, legal obligations, or geographic force majeure beyond the beneficiary's control. Voluntary vacations, leisure travel, or non-emergency personal plans do not constitute reasonable refusal. Voluntary vacations. He wrote those exact words in January 2024. Full 26 months later, my parents chose to ignore his stroke specifically for their vacation in Cabo, Mexico. Between January 2024 and August 2025, my grandfather's estate appreciated. Thanks to smart investments, market gains, and real estate appreciation, the $8.2 million grew into $10 million. My mother's 40% share grew to $4 million. Meanwhile, the share Florence stood to gain if the clause was triggered rose to $7.5 million. In June 2025, just 2 months before his stroke, my grandfather met with Attorney Huang once more. Your estate is currently valued at $9.8 million. If the clause is triggered, Florence will receive $3.92 million. My grandfather offered a sad smile. If it is triggered, it means she earned every single penny. If it isn't, I will be relieved to know I was wrong about Patricia. Do you truly believe she would abandon you during a crisis just to go on vacation? I watched her refuse to help Florence buy an AAC device, refuse to help pay for Noah's therapy, and refuse to help with emergency rent, all for the sake of her vacations. Why would she treat me any differently? As it turned out, she didn't. What I didn't know at the time was that Attorney Huang had also prepared an evidence collection protocol. In January 2024, right after the amendment took effect, Attorney Huang sent a formal letter to the legal department at St. Joseph's Hospital. Subject: regarding patient Arthur Brennan, date of birth, March 17, 1946. Should this patient be hospitalized, please maintain detailed visitor logs, family contact records, and any relevant witness statements regarding family presence or absence. These records may be utilized in subsequent estate legal proceedings. Enclosed is a check for $2,500 as advance compensation for the additional administrative burden placed on the facility. The hospital agreed. So when I checked in at 8:40 a.m. on the first morning, they recorded it. When I stayed in the room for 18 hours every day, they recorded it. When my parents failed to show up for 6 straight days, they recorded it. When Nurse Jenna wrote those entries in the medical chart after the speakerphone incident, it went straight into the legal record. Every signature, every hour, and every witness was meticulously documented. August 28, 2025. Day 4. Following that spiteful speakerphone call, Nurse Jenna wrote in her log. Patient's daughter, Patricia, was contacted on speakerphone by patient's granddaughter, Florence. Patricia refused to return from her vacation in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, despite the patient being in critical condition. She stated, "Your grandfather has nurses," and referred to Florence as a nuisance in front of more than 12 witnesses. Patient's granddaughter, Florence, maintains an 18-hour daily vigil. Recommend legal documentation for family neglect. Jenna had no idea she had just sealed my mother's financial fate, but that's exactly what she did. Day 6. Sunday, August 29, 2025, 9:15 a.m. Dr. Patel found me in the waiting room. I had been there since 6:30 a.m., operating on just 3 hours of sleep. Miss Cruz, I have good news. I stood up so fast my head spun. Your grandfather is a miracle. At 79, after a severe stroke, he is recovering faster than patients half his age. Whatever you've been doing, being here day and night, talking to him, holding his hand, it worked. So, he's going to be okay? There's an 85% chance of a full recovery, though he'll need rehabilitation, speech therapy, and physical therapy for about 12 to 16 weeks. But yes, he is going to make it. I collapsed back into my chair and began to sob out loud. He was going to live. 6 days, 108 hours, and $2,428 spent. But he survived. At 2:30 p.m., I posted a message in the family group chat. Grandfather is stable and out of the ICU. He pulled through. I waited, wondering if my parents would feel a shred of guilt over their absence, if they would apologize, or if they had any self-awareness about what they had done. The reply came at 12:40 p.m., 3 hours and 25 minutes later. My mother, that is such a relief. Thank God. We were worried sick, but we knew he was in good hands with the doctors. Give him our best. See you Wednesday. Brandon, great news. Grandfather is a fighter. Everyone enjoy the rest of the trip. Enjoy the rest of the trip. Not thank you for staying by his side. Not we're sorry we couldn't be there. Not how are you holding up. Just enjoy the trip. I didn't reply. I simply took a screenshot and saved it to my evidence folder. My mother sent 28 words, not a single one addressing me. Brandon sent 12 words, completely ignoring my presence as well. A total of 6 emojis, praying hands, hearts, palm trees, and sunshine. At 1:15 p.m., my mother posted an Instagram story that I saw later. The caption read, "Last 2 days in paradise, sunset cruise party tonight." This was posted 3 hours after learning her father had cleared the critical window. Paradise. I saved that screenshot too. For the first time in 6 days, I ate a complete meal. Not vending machine pretzels, not granola bars donated by nurses, and not coffee. Real food. At the hospital cafeteria, 10:45 p.m. chicken sandwich for $8.75, side salad for $3.25, apple juice for $2.50 total. 14.50. I sat at the table alone, weeping as I ate. Relief, exhaustion, and loneliness swept over me. A nurse walked over from a different floor, her badge reading Kesha, labor and delivery. She paused beside me. "Honey, I've been watching you all week. You're here every single day. Are you taking care of yourself?" "My grandfather is recovering. That's all that matters. And who is taking care of you?" That single question shattered what little composure I had left. Nobody. That's not right. You know that's not right, don't you? I nodded, unable to speak. She squeezed my shoulder gently and walked away. I finished eating, threw away the trash, and headed back to my grandfather's new room in the step-down unit. Room 3412. He was sitting up, the first time I had seen him upright in a week. He offered a faint, gentle smile that came straight from the heart. He patted the chair beside his bed. "Sit down. We need to talk." His speech was still slightly slurred, but perfectly clear. "When they get back on Wednesday, they won't be coming for me. They'll be coming for themselves." I didn't understand. "What do you mean?" "They'll want to discuss my future, my care, and my assets." They'll use words like practical and planning ahead. Don't let them push you around. I won't be attending those family meetings. This is between you and them. You will be there. I need you as a witness. He took my hand. Flo, listen to me. After Thanksgiving in 2023, I updated my will. My heart skipped a beat. What? I can't share all the details with you right now. Mitchell said I shouldn't. But I want you to know that you are protected. Everything you did this week, standing watch, sacrificing for Noah, spending your savings, all of it is legally documented. Grandfather, I didn't do any of this for. I know, he interrupted softly. And that is precisely why you deserve everything that is coming. They did nothing. You did everything. And both choices carry consequences. He closed his eyes and squeezed my hand 3 times. I love you. On Wednesday, when they arrive, stay by my side. You'll understand then. I had no idea what he was referring to. 3 days later, it all became crystal clear. Wednesday, September 1, 2025. 2:15 p.m. I was in the hospital cafeteria taking a quick coffee break, my first taste of caffeine in 4 hours. My phone buzzed with a text from Aunt Rachel. They're here, your parents, on the 3rd floor. I grabbed my coffee and rushed to the elevator. In the hallway outside the step-down unit, I saw them before they saw me. Deep bronze tans from 10 days under the Cabo sun. My mother's skin practically glowed, while my father's face was flushed from margaritas and sun exposure. They were carrying 4 resort gift bags stamped with the Los Cabos logo. Duty-free tequila visible through the plastic. They were laughing together, Brandon alongside them with his wife, Amber, and their children. The moment they saw me, the laughter stopped abruptly. Flo! Hi, sweetie. My mother opened her arms for a hug. I took a step back. She froze, arms half extended, a look of complete confusion on her face. You look exhausted. Have you slept at all? My voice came out flat and completely devoid of emotion. I've slept in a chair for 10 days. My father shifted uncomfortably. Well, either way, we're here now. Where's Dad? Room 3412. He's resting. Brandon rubbed his hands together. Great, let's go see him. I stood my ground, blocking the way. Visiting hours in the step-down unit are restricted, 2 people maximum, and he needs rest. My mother's face instantly hardened. Florence, we just flew in from Mexico. We are going to see him now. You flew in on your scheduled flight 10 days after he nearly died. The hallway went quiet. My father's face turned a deep shade of purple, entirely distinct from his sunburn. We are going to see him right now. I stepped aside. Fine. But I'm coming in too. There was no way I was leaving them alone with my grandfather, especially after everything I had learned. Room 32412. 2:22 p.m. My grandfather was awake, sitting in an armchair by the window reading a book. He looked up as we walked in, his face instantly turning blank, a wall of absolute indifference. My mother rushed toward him. Dad! Oh, thank goodness you're okay! She tried to hug him, but his arms remained pinned firmly to his sides. He didn't hug her back. She pulled away, looking bewildered and hurt. My father stepped forward. You really gave us a scare. My grandfather's voice was icy and measured. Did I? The visit lasted 8 brief minutes. Stilted small talk about the weather, their flight, and his recovery, punctuated by 4 suffocating minutes of total silence. Then Nurse Carlos walked in. He needs to rest now. Please wrap up your visit. My parents looked visibly relieved, seizing the excuse to exit. They filed out one by one. I lingered behind for a second, catching my grandfather's eye as he gave me a subtle wink. He was playing a long game, and they didn't even realize the board was set. Outside room 3412, 2:32 p.m. My father turned to face me, Brandon hovering right behind him, and my mother folding her arms over her chest. We need to talk about his long-term care. My stomach dropped. Here it comes. Your grandfather is 79. This stroke was a warning sign. He can't live alone anymore, and we need to discuss the next steps. My mother chimed in immediately. There's a wonderful assisted living facility called the Orchards. It's $8,500 a month, with memory care and skilled nursing on site. He doesn't need memory care. He's recovering, I fired back. Porch. My father ignored me. He needs to sell the house. It's worth $4.2 million. We can invest that money properly to make sure it lasts. Brandon stepped forward. We've been discussing it, the three of us. And we think it's best if he signs over power of attorney before things get any worse. He's doing fine. His doctor said there's an 85% chance of a full recovery. Porch. My mother's voice turned sharp. Flo, you're being entirely too emotional about this. We are trying to be practical. Practical? That single word hit a nerve, shattering whatever restraint I had left. Practical? Where was your practicality when I begged you to come back? Where was it when I spent $2,200 just to find childcare? Where was it when Noah lost his daycare spot? Porch. My father's face turned bright red. Don't throw that in our faces. Aren't we standing right here now? 10 days late! At the nurses' station 30 feet away, 2 nurses stared in our direction. A passing family slowed down to listen in. Brandon took a step closer. Look, we're just trying to. Patricia, Gordon, Brandon, all of you get in here. Florence, you too. Porch. My grandfather's voice cut through from the doorway. He was standing with his walker, Nurse Carclose holding his elbow. His tone was calm, entirely too calm. We are going to have this conversation right now. We filed back into room 3412 at 2:44 p.m. My grandfather sat in his armchair. Not the bed, but the chair, placing himself in a position of authority. He pointed toward the sofa against the wall. Porch. Sit. My mother, father, and Brandon sat down, placed in a lower position, forced to look up at him. I stood near the door. He nodded at me. Stay right there. Nurse Carlos remained inside as well, standing near the medical equipment. He claimed he needed to check vital signs, but he didn't check a thing. He was there as a witness. Porch. My grandfather reached for a manila envelope on the side table, its label clearly visible. Law Offices of Huang and Associates. He rested the envelope on his lap, keeping his hand over it without opening it. My parents stared fixedly at the envelope, nobody daring to breathe. Before we discuss my future, my grandfather began, let's discuss the past 10 days. His voice changed completely. Porch. It was no longer the voice of a gentle grandfather, but that of a judge. The authority forged over 28 years on the federal bench fully on display. Specifically, what each of you did during this medical crisis. He surveyed the room and began calling names. Uncle James called within hours, flew in the next day, and visited daily. Aunt Rachel did the same. Porch. Cousin Julie arrived on the 3rd day and kept track of everything. Florence maintained a vigil in this room for 108 hours, spent $2,428, lost her child's daycare spot, and sacrificed her own son's needs. Then he turned to my parents. Now it's your turn, Patricia. Gordon. Brandon, tell me what you did. Absolute silence. Porch. Patricia, you are my daughter. I raised you. I put you through college. I walked you down the aisle. When you received the call that I suffered a severe stroke and was fighting for my life, what did you do? My mother shifted uncomfortably. Dad, we were on vacation. We couldn't just... You stayed in Cabo for 10 days. Porch. You posted photos on Instagram. Sunset cruises, margaritas by the pool, snorkeling. While I was on a ventilator in the ICU, you were riding jet skis. Is that accurate? Her face fell. You're making it sound much worse than it actually was. Am I? My grandfather turned slightly. Nurse Carlos, please read what you documented. Carlos pulled a small notebook from his pocket. Porch. My mother's eyes widened. Here it comes, I thought. This is the moment that changes everything. Nurse Carlos cleared his throat and began reading in a tone that was clinical, objective, and utterly devastating. August 28th, 3:22 p.m. Patient's daughter, Patricia, was contacted on speakerphone by patient's granddaughter, Florence. Porch. The conversation was overheard by 12 family members, 2 nurses, 1 chaplain, and 3 civilian witnesses in the public waiting area. My mother turned pale as Carlos continued reading. Patricia Cruz stated, Florence, you are such a nuisance. We spent $12,000 on this trip. Your grandfather has nurses. Figure it out yourself. End quote. Porch. Patient's granddaughter exhibited severe distress. Patient's daughter's language was documented as hostile, dismissive, and transactional. He flipped a page. Witness statement from Rachel Brennan. I have never seen anyone treat their child that way. Official statement submitted by Chaplain Reverend Miles. This constitutes emotional abuse in a clinical environment. My mother began to cry silently, her mascara smudging. Carlos closed his notebook and looked at my grandfather, who gave a brief nod. Visitor log. Florence Cruz, 108 hours, days 1 through 6. Patricia Cruz, 0 hours, days 1 through 9, text records. Florence sent 8 messages requesting assistance to Gordon Cruz. All marked read. 0 replies. Phone records. August 27, 10:30 a.m. Duration 4 minutes and 18 seconds. Gordon Cruz disconnected the call. Exact quote, "You're an adult woman. Figure it out yourself." Call ended. My father's jaw remained tightly clenched. You can't use hospital records as a weapon against me, my mother sobbed. My grandfather leaned forward. When they constitute evidence, I certainly can. And evidence they are, because 26 months ago I added a clause to my will. He picked up the manila envelope, opened it, and pulled out an 18-page document. The cover page was clearly visible, Last Will and Testament of Arthur James Brennan, revised January 8, 2024. My mother opened her mouth, but no sound came out. My grandfather didn't yell or raise his voice. He simply read aloud in a measured tone. Section 7, subsection C, the morality clause. His finger traced the printed lines. Any beneficiary who fails to provide reasonable, substantial family support to another family member, demonstrating a documented urgent need during a period when the testator suffers a severe medical incapacitation requiring hospitalization exceeding 48 hours, shall forfeit their entire inheritance share under this will. He looked up. You stayed in Cabo for 10 days. Florence was here for 108 hours. She had documented urgent needs, a childcare crisis, financial strain, and a medical emergency. And you offered 0 support. He paused. The clause has been triggered. My mother finally found her trembling voice. You can't be serious. My grandfather's expression remained set like stone. I am a retired federal judge. I spent 28 years writing legally binding rulings. Do I look like I'm joking? My father bolted upright. This is absurd. You can't disinherit her just because we took a vacation. I am not disinheriting her, my grandfather said calmly. She disinherited herself. The clause was set down in plain language, clear and explicit. She chose Cabo. Therefore, the will chose Florence. Brandon stood up as well. This will never hold up in court. We'll contest it in probate. My grandfather offered a cold, knowing smile. Mitchell, you've been on the line. Care to answer that? A voice echoed from my grandfather's phone resting on the side table. I hadn't even noticed it until then. Attorney Mitchell Huang had been listening to everything on speakerphone. Attorney Huang's voice filled the room, calm, professional, and entirely decisive. Mr. Brandon Cruz. I have served as Patricia's father's estate attorney for 19 years. When this will was drafted, its core purpose was to withstand any legal challenge. The clause is narrowly tailored, grounded in indisputable evidence, and documented by independent medical professionals. Any contest will fail and cost you roughly $180,000 in legal fees. I strongly advise against it. Brandon's face drained of color. Attorney Huang continued. Furthermore, under Title 14 of the Arizona Revised Statutes, the law grants testators broad discretion in establishing conditional bequests. Judge Brennan's clause meets all statutory requirements. The conditions are unambiguous, backed by objective documentation, and reasonably related to the testator's care needs. I hold hospital records, witness affidavits, financial documentation, and your travel receipts proving Patricia was in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico when the triggering event occurred. A brief pause followed. Your Instagram posts have been designated as Exhibits A through J. My mother gasped. You You used my Instagram. Attorney Huang's tone remained crisp. You made them public yourself. Exhibit C, August 26th, poolside photo, caption Paradise. Timestamped 4:47 p.m. while your father was on a ventilator. Exhibit F, August 28th, sunset cruise photo, posted at 8:15 p.m. Arch. While your daughter sat in a hospital waiting room eating vending machine chips for dinner. Shall I continue? Total silence filled the room. This will is ironclad. The probability of a successful contest is under 5%. Litigation costs will run between $180,000 and $250,000. You can neither afford it, nor can you win. Arch. My father's face was now dark purple. So that's it? You're giving everything to Florence? My grandfather stood up slowly. Supported by his walker, he straightened his back, projecting total authority. Not everything. But yes, Patricia's $4 million share goes to Florence. Arch. Uncle James retains his portion, though he has voluntarily offered to reduce his share to $2.5 million, allocating an additional $500,000 to Florence. Thus, Florence will receive $4.5 million in liquid assets. James receives $2.5 million, and the charity receives $3 million. He stared directly at my mother, and you receive nothing. The room fell dead silent. Arch. My grandfather spoke once more, his voice softer, yet infinitely heavier. Patricia Gordon Brandon, over these past 10 days, you taught me a valuable lesson. He took a deep breath. You taught me that blood does not guarantee loyalty. Titles like mother, father, or son mean nothing without action. Florence isn't perfect, but she showed up, she stayed, she made sacrifices. Arch. When I was hovering between life and death, she chose me over her own comfort. A long pause hung in the air. And you chose jet skis. Another heavy pause filled the room. That right there is the difference between an inheritance and a legacy, my grandfather said, and neither of you deserves either. He sank back into his chair, completely exhausted. The nurses told me everything. Arch. Jenna recorded that speakerphone call. Carlos documented how long you were actually here. The hospital social worker filed her report, and my lawyer has it all. He looked directly at them. Arch. When my granddaughter, your own daughter, was crying on the phone, begging you to watch her autistic son for just a few days so she could hold her grandfather's hand while he was dying, you called her a burden right in front of a room full of strangers. You told her to figure it out herself. His voice turned icy cold. So I figured it out for her. You're out. My mother completely collapsed. Arch. She dropped to the floor, sobbing hysterically. My father's face turned bright red with rage. He stood up and took a menacing step toward my grandfather, but Carlos, the nurse, immediately stepped in front of him. Sir, I need you to leave right now. Carlos said calmly but firmly. You manipulative old fool. Sir, outside, now. Carlos warned, his tone leaving no room for argument. Arch. Brandon grabbed my father's arm. Dad, come on, let's go. They stormed out of the room in a blind fury. It was exactly 2:58 p.m. My mother couldn't even stand up on her own. My Aunt Rachel, who had been standing in the hallway and heard every single word, walked in and helped her up. Come on, Patricia, let's get some air. Arch. Out in the corridor, Brandon slammed his fist into the wall, leaving a 3-inch dent in the drywall. Hospital security was called immediately. By 3:19 p.m., the hospital had issued him an $850 bill for property damage. I was standing near the door, completely frozen, trembling from head to toe. $7.5 million total. Noah's future, my future. It was all completely secured. Arch. But the only thought running through my mind was the sheer absurdity of it all. My mother had just lost $4 million simply because she refused to help me with her own grandson for 4 days. My grandfather reached out his hand toward me. I'm so sorry you had to see all of that. You've done so much for me. I just wanted to do what was right, I whispered. Arch. You earned this, he said gently. They threw it away all on their own. Mr. Wong's voice came through the speakerphone. Florence, we need to meet tomorrow morning to go over the estate planning, trusts and tax structures. But for now, congratulations. Your grandfather just changed your life." I was completely speechless. My grandfather squeezed my hand tight. "You stayed. Orch. That's all that matters. You showed up." At 4:45 p.m. I left the hospital. I drove straight home and picked Noah up from the emergency caregiver. The total came to $342, $38 an hour for 9 hours. Later that evening, I sat on my apartment floor while Noah played quietly with his wooden blocks nearby. Porch. I stared at the blank wall and whispered to myself, "We're going to be okay. We're actually going to be okay." I didn't even know if I fully believed it yet, but I wanted to believe it more than anything in the world. By Wednesday evening at 6:47 p.m., the family group chat blew up into complete chaos. My mother fired the first shot, messaging everyone, "I am completely heartbroken." Orch. Dad was clearly manipulated in his weakest moment, praying that the truth comes to light soon. Within 2 hours, 47 messages flooded the chat. The family was splitting apart in real time. Aunt Rachel jumped in at 6:52 p.m. "Patricia, stop it. You were on speakerphone calling your own daughter a burden while she was sitting by your father's bedside." I heard it. Orch. All 12 of us in that room heard it. "Stop playing the victim." Uncle Tom replied at 6:55 p.m. "I flew in from Colorado the second I heard the news. I personally saw Florence sleeping on a hospital chair for a week straight. Where were you? Cabo. Stop lying." My cousin Julie added at 7:03 p.m. "I have the complete audio recording of that speakerphone incident." Orch. "Do you want me to drop it right here in the group chat?" My mother left the group chat at 7:15 p.m., but the messages kept coming. 14 family members backed me up completely. 3 took my parents' side, mostly relatives on my father's side who never even set foot in the hospital. 6 people remained quiet. Orch. At 7:32 p.m., Brandon created a brand new group chat named Real Family. He excluded me entirely and added my parents, his wife, and our father's relatives. Aunt Rachel immediately took a screenshot and sent it to me. "They're scheming," she warned. I didn't reply. I just saved the screenshot. By Thursday morning at 9:15 a.m., my mother posted a long statement on Facebook. Orch. "It is devastating to watch someone you love get manipulated at their most vulnerable moment. When lies are spread, when families are torn apart, and when greed disguises itself as care. I raised my daughter to be a good person, and I pray she finds her conscience again." She added hashtags like family betrayal, heartbroken, and prayer warriors. Orch. Within 3 hours, the post gained 89 comments. My mother's friend Linda commented, "Oh my goodness, who could do such a thing to your family?" Aunt Rachel replied publicly right underneath, "Patricia, your father suffered a stroke while you were vacationing in Cabo. Your daughter begged you for help, and you called her a burden. I was standing right there. Stop lying to everyone." Orch. A total stranger left another comment. "Ma'am, your own family members are calling you out in the comments. Maybe it's time to take a look in the mirror." The post was deleted by 12:30 p.m., lasting barely 3 hours. But 14 people had already taken screenshots, including me. Orch. One screenshot spread like wildfire and ended up posted in an Arizona support group for autism parents. A group with over 3,200 members. Someone recognized the story and realized it was about me. The comments in that support group were ruthless. "So this is the mother who called her daughter a burden, just because she asked for help with her autistic grandson? She doesn't deserve a single cent." Orch. My mother had no idea her post had gone viral in special needs parent communities, but I knew. By Friday at 7:18 p.m., my father sent out a massive mass email to 247 recipients, including distant relatives and longtime family friends. The subject line read, "The truth about Florence and my father." It was an 847-word rant. I won't bore you with all the nonsense, but here were the highlights. Orch. My daughter Florence has a long history of emotional instability and attention-seeking behavior. Instead of bringing our family together, she isolated my father, fed him toxic lies, and destroyed his relationship with us. She intentionally spent money on unnecessary emergency childcare just to emotionally manipulate him. Orch. My father's mental state was compromised after his stroke, and under this undue influence, he was coerced into altering his legal documents. We are pursuing every legal option to address this. He even CC'd his attorney from Jenkins and Associates as an intimidation tactic. 31 people hit reply all. 12 backed my father. Again, relatives who hadn't visited the hospital. Orch. 19 stood up for me. Aunt Rachel sent a reply to all 247 people. Gordon, I was right there in the room. Florence stayed by his side for 108 hours while you were out riding jet skis. Sit down and shut up. Uncle Tom replied, I personally saw Florence sleeping in waiting room chairs. I saw the hospital records. She spent $2,400 on childcare because you refused to help. Orch. The only person lying here is you. Cousin Julie added, I have audio recordings, hospital documentation, and witness statements. If you keep spreading these lies, I will make sure every single person on this email list gets a copy. Amidst all the chaos, incredible support came from unexpected places. On Saturday morning, Aunt Rachel texted me, I've known your mother for 35 years. Orch. I watched her care more about appearances than people her whole life, but what she did to you and your dad crossed every line. I'm in your corner. Whatever you need. Legal help, childcare, a witness statement, or just a hug. I'm here. On Sunday, Chaplain Miles from the hospital sent an email. Dear Ms. Cruz, I rarely intervene in family matters outside of spiritual counseling. Orch. However, what I witnessed in that waiting room was undeniable emotional neglect. I have submitted an official statement to the hospital administration and your grandfather's legal team. I am fully prepared to testify if necessary. Your devotion to your grandfather was a testament to love. Your mother's actions were a complete betrayal. Pastor Charles Miles. Orch. Jenna, the nurse, offered to sign a formal affidavit. Carlos did the same. On Monday, Brandon's wife, Amber, sent me a private message. Florence, I had no idea they refused to help you. I didn't know about that speakerphone call either. I'm completely shocked and disgusted. I know Brandon would be furious if he knew I was sending this, but you did the right thing. They are completely wrong. Orch. If you ever need help watching Noah, I am here for you. For free, anytime. She risked friction in her own marriage just to do the right thing. 8 solid allies. 4 formal witness statements. My parents were completely losing the battle they started. On Tuesday, September 7th, 2 weeks after the stroke, Mr. Wong sent an email. Orch. Florence, your grandfather wants to meet at my office tomorrow at 10 a.m. Bring Noah. We have paperwork to review and a trust to establish for your son. This is good news. See you tomorrow, Mitchell. I read it 3 times. A trust for Noah. I called Aunt Rachel and sobbed on the phone for 11 straight minutes. He's protecting him, I cried. Even Noah, he's protecting both of us. Orch. That's what real family does, Rachel said gently. And I couldn't argue with that. Wednesday, September 8, 2025 at 10 a.m. 15th floor of Wong & Associates in downtown Phoenix. Floor-to-soiling windows with a city view and a massive conference table built for 12. I arrived with Noah. Orch. He carried his speech device, a weighted backpack filled with sensory toys, and his favorite blue toy truck. My grandfather was already sitting there, using a cane. In just 2 weeks, he had recovered nearly 90% of his mobility. Mitchell Wong stood up to greet us. He was in his mid-50s, sharp, dressed impeccably, with a stern yet kind demeanor. Florence, thank you for coming. Orch. Noah, I set up a quiet room next door with some toys for you. If you need a break, your mom can see you right through the glass door. Noah pressed a button on his device. Hi. Blue truck. Mr. Wong smiled. Yes, I have blue trucks. Your grandfather told me all about them. My grandfather slowly lowered himself down to eye level with Noah. Hey, Noah Bear, want to check out my friend's office? Orch. He's got some cool toys. Noah looked through the glass door, saw the setup, and nodded. I helped him get settled, and he immediately started playing contentedly. I sat at the conference table. where 3 boxes of tissues were laid out. My grandfather had requested them, knowing how emotional today would be. Mr. Wong opened a thick leather binder and pulled out a 47-page document, sliding it across to me. The title read, "The Noah Cruz Special Needs Trust." "This is Noah's future," Mr. Wong explained. "Irrevocable, fully funded, and completely protected." Within 3 minutes, tears were streaming down my face. Mr. Wong went over the details. A $2.5 million irrevocable trust for Noah. It covers his therapies for life. Currently $890 a month, fully funded until age 65. That's over $640,000 right there, adjusted for inflation. It covers speech device upgrades every 3 years at $3,000 each, budgeted for 20 replacements. Special education expenses, up to $28,000 a year for vet schooling if needed until age 22. Medical expenses not covered by insurance. Group home or supportive housing costs if needed after age 18, averaging $4,500 a month, plus occupational therapy, life skills coaching, and adaptive equipment. Mr. Wong leaned forward, his voice serious. "This trust is specifically structured so Noah will never lose his eligibility for SSI or Medicaid. The funds cannot be touched by creditors and they cannot be seized in any lawsuit. Even if something happens to you, Florence, this trust remains fully operational. Noah is protected for life." I couldn't even breathe. For years, I lived in constant fear, struggling every single month to pay for his therapies, terrified of what would happen to him if I wasn't around. My grandfather reached across the table and held my hand tight. "Now you know. No matter what happens, he will always be taken care of." I looked through the glass door. Noah was rolling his blue truck back and forth, making quiet humming sounds, completely unaware that his entire future had just been forever changed. Mr. Wong pulled out another document. "After funding Noah's trust, here is the breakdown for the remainder of the estate." He handed me a summary sheet. $7.5 million allocated directly to me. That included his $4.2 million estate in Scottsdale, a 4-bedroom, 3,800 square foot home that I could sell or keep, plus $3.3 million in liquid assets like stocks, bonds, and cash reserves. Mr. Wong did the math for me. If you sell the house, you'll have $7.5 million in liquid capital. Invested conservatively at a 4% annual yield. That generates $300,000 a year in passive income. I had been working 50 hours a week, grinding myself to the bone just to earn $52,000 a year. And now I was looking at $300,000 a year in passive income. "You can quit your job," my grandfather said quietly. "You can work part-time. You can spend every morning with Noah. You can afford everything he will ever need. You will never have to beg your parents for $3,000 ever again." I buried my face in my hands and sobbed uncontrollably. Years of crushing stress, terror, and financial survival mode washed away in a single moment. My grandfather wiped tears from his own eyes. "It's time to live, Flo. Stop just surviving and start living." You can take Noah to the park without staring at your watch, worrying about caregiver costs. You can say yes to therapies without checking your bank balance first. You can finally rest. Rest. I couldn't even remember what that word felt like. Mr. Wong presented one final document. "Your grandfather has one final request." My grandfather's voice was steady and strong. "I want you to set aside $500,000 to create an endowment fund for families raising children with autism." He explained, "The Arthur Brennan Special Needs Support Fund. It will fund respite care, the very thing your parents refused to help with, emergency childcare. The thing you had to pay $2,400 for, and speech devices. The equipment you begged $3,000 for. It will support 12 families a year, $40,000 per family, renewable for up to 3 years, managed through the Arizona Autism Coalition. And you will sit on the board." "I watched you beg," my grandfather said softly. "I watched you struggle, choosing between therapy bills and groceries. No parent should ever have to feel that kind of despair. This fund will help families just like yours. Orch. In my name, he paused, looking at me. But really, in yours. Because you showed me what real love looks like. Grandpa, this is your legacy, I whispered. No, you are my legacy. That fund is just paperwork. You, and what you do for Noah and what you did for me, that's what I'm leaving behind. That's what actually matters. The glass door opened and Noah walked out. Orch. He didn't say anything. He just climbed right onto my grandfather's lap and sat there quietly. That was his way of showing affection. My grandfather wrapped his arms around him and cried silently. I was crying too. Noah didn't understand why, but he reached out and gently patted my grandfather's hand. The meeting wrapped up at 12:30 p.m., after 2.5 emotional hours. Orch. I stood up and gave my grandfather a long, tight hug, both of us wiping away tears. Thank you for seeing me when everyone else ignored me, I said. Thank you for proving you were worth seeing, he replied. September 29, 2025. 3 weeks after the hospital confrontation. Orch. It was 7:15 p.m., right in the middle of Noah's bedtime routine. Bath at 7, pajamas at 7:10, storybook at 7:30, lights out at 8:15. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Noah froze instantly. Unexpected noises always triggered his anxiety. I checked the Ring doorbell camera on my phone. My mother was standing at the doorstep. Orch. Her hair was messy. She wore no makeup, just yoga pants and an oversized sweater. She looked completely exhausted and worn down. My stomach sank. I spoke through the doorbell speaker. I'm not opening the door. She looked up at the camera. Mascara smudged around her eyes. Florence, please, we need to talk. I'm your mother. Orch. When I was crying and begging you to help watch your grandson, you called me a burden in front of strangers. You chose margaritas over your dying father. We have nothing to talk about. Can I just say I'm sorry? What more do you want from me? You're only sorry that you lost $4 million, I said coldly. You aren't sorry for what you did. Those are two very different things. Orch. Inside, Noah began rocking back and forth, covering his ears. The raised voices and sudden disruption were overwhelming him. I needed her gone immediately. The doorbell rang again, 6 frantic times in a row. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. Noah started screaming. My voice turned to steel through the speaker. You are causing my son to have a sensory meltdown. Orch. Leave right now, or I am calling the police. She started pounding on the door violently. Bang, bang, bang! Noah's screams grew louder as he hit a full-blown meltdown. I'm your mother. I raised you. I sacrificed so much for you, and now you're throwing me away like trash just for money? I unlocked my phone, started screen recording, and captured everything through the Ring system. Orch. You didn't sacrifice so much for me, I fired back. You did the absolute legal minimum. You fed me, clothed me, and sent me to public school. That isn't heroic parenting. It wasn't abuse, but it certainly doesn't mean I owe you $4 million. I raised you, your grandfather loved me. Those two things are not the same, I replied. Orch. She kept going. After everything your parents did for you, you're going to keep all that money for yourself? We paid for your college. No, you didn't. I paid for my own college. $67,000 in student loans that I just finished paying off last year. You paid $180,000 for Brandon's college. Don't rewrite history. We let you live at home until you were 23. Orch. And you charged me $800 a month in market rate rent. You gave me no handouts. I paid you $23,000 over 2.5 years. Don't call me ungrateful. I'm just done letting you spin your bare minimum as generosity. Dead silence. Then her tone shifted completely, from guilt-tripping to pure hostility. Fine. If you won't share, we'll see you in court. I almost laughed. A bitter, sharp laugh. Orch. Good luck with that. Mr. Wong drafted that will 26 months ago, long before the stroke. My grandfather was completely coherent, with witnesses and notarization. That clause was active before I even knew it existed. You don't have a leg to stand on. We will drag this out in court for years. The legal fees alone will drain you. Where are you getting $250,000 for legal fees? Orch. Go ahead and sue. If any lawyer tells you that you can win, they're just taking your money. That will was written by a retired federal judge with 28 years on the bench. He knows exactly how to make it airtight. Inside, Noah was still screaming. I needed to go comfort my son. The judge will see how you manipulated him, she yelled. We will tell everyone what you did. We'll ruin your reputation. You already tried that on Facebook, in emails, and in the family chat. It completely backfired. 19 people defended me, and only 3 backed you up. The only ruined reputation here is yours. She broke down crying hysterically. How can you be so cruel? I felt something cold and decisive settle deep inside my chest. I learned from the absolute best. Now get off my porch. She stood outside for another 32 seconds. I watched her through the camera. Finally, she turned around and walked away. It was 7:47 p.m. The entire confrontation had lasted 32 minutes. At 9:30 p.m. that night, Noah finally fell asleep after a severe 45-minute meltdown. A warm bath, a weighted blanket, 3 storybooks, and white noise brought him back to his routine at 8:32 p.m. sharp. I sat at my kitchen table, holding my phone, opening my contacts. Mom, Dad, Brandon. I stared at those 3 names for 11 straight minutes. Then, one by one, block, block, block. Facebook, unfriend and block. Mom, Dad, Brandon. Instagram, blocked. Email, created a filter to automatically delete any incoming emails from their addresses, straight to trash, no inbox. The next day, September 30th, I changed my phone number. I gave my new number to only 12 people. My grandfather, Aunt Rachel, Uncle Tom, cousin Julie, 3 close friends, Zoa's pediatrician, his therapist, his daycare contact, Mr. Wong, and the Emergency Respite Care Center. That was it. At 9:52 p.m., I texted Aunt Rachel. I blocked all 3 of them. Was I wrong to do that? She replied at 9:54 p.m. That's self-preservation. You don't owe them access to your life, especially after everything. I'm proud of you. Part of me feels so guilty. That's just the programming they installed in your head growing up. Ignore it. Guilt is their weapon. Don't pick it up. What if they come after you again? Then call me or call the police. You have every right to protect yourself and Noah. That isn't cruelty. It's sanity. On October 1, 2025, I woke up and looked at my phone. 0 notifications from my parents. For the first time in 32 years, I woke up to a morning completely free from their drama. It felt light, a little scary, but insanely liberating. 6 months after the stroke, 7 months after the hospital confrontation, my grandfather had recovered 95% of his health and was living independently again. He sold his $4.2 million house and bought a lovely 2-bedroom condo overlooking Camelback Mountain for $680,000. The remaining proceeds returned to his estate trust. I visited him 3 times a week, Tuesdays at 5 p.m., Thursdays at 10 a.m., and Sundays at 2 p.m. We cooked together and played with Noah. My grandfather was teaching Noah how to play checkers using a custom visual board he made specifically for him. On Sunday afternoon, March 15, 2026, my grandfather moved a piece. Your turn, Noah Bear. Noah tapped his speech device. Red. Jump. Win. My grandfather laughed. Not yet, buddy, but close. I stood in the kitchen brewing tea, watching them with tears in my eyes. Noah had never played games before. He couldn't handle the unpredictability. My grandfather looked up at me. He plays now because he feels safe. Routines provide safety, but feeling secure gives you the courage to take risks. You taught me that. The doorbell rang. I instantly tense up, a lingering trace of trauma from the night my mother showed up. My grandfather noticed my reaction immediately. It's okay, Flo. I ordered pizza. You're completely safe here. I let out a long breath. Still healing, still learning what true safety feels like. I had resigned from my job back in November, giving a full 4 weeks' notice and leaving on good terms. Now, I only work part-time, 25 hours a week, doing remote pediatric occupational therapy consulting. It's flexible, paying $45 an hour, bringing in $1,125 a week. That's around $58,500 a year if I work year-round, but I don't even need to. The investment income covers all our living expenses. I keep my entire mornings from 8 a.m. to noon, completely free for Noah. We do therapy sessions, learning activities, and practice his communication skills on his speech device. It's high-quality bonding time I never had before. In February, Noah's speech therapist sent an updated progress report. Noah has shown extraordinary progress over the last 4 months. His spontaneous use of his speech device has increased dramatically. He is initiating communication on his own rather than just responding. He has even begun attempting to vocalize 6 distinct words. This progress directly correlates with increased parental presence and a significant reduction in household stress. Whatever you are doing, please keep it up. I cried when I read that report. I was finally able to just be there for him. That was all it took. On December 14, 2025, I bought a house. After selling my grandfather's large estate, I purchased a modest 3-bedroom home in cash for $680,000. No mortgage. Located in the Madison Meadows neighborhood of North Phoenix, it sat in a top-tier school district with a fantastic special education program. I spent $18,000 customizing a dedicated sensory roof for Noah, complete with padded walls, dimmable LED lighting, a therapy swing, crash pads, and weighted blankets. Outside, a fully fenced 0.3-acre backyard gave Noah a safe space to play. Inside, I had a quiet home office and a guest room where Aunt Rachel stays once a month to give me a little break. We've grown incredibly close. On moving day, Noah walked into his sensory room for the first time. He reached out and touched the soft blue swing. "Mine," he said softly. Tears welled in my eyes. "Yes, buddy, yours forever. This is our home." He ran to the swing, sat down, gently rocking back and forth while humming happily. Then, a massive, bright smile spread across his face, a rare, beautiful sight. It was the sound of pure joy. I whispered to myself, "We made it. We're finally home." While unpacking, I found a box labeled Evidence filled with screenshots, emails, hospital logs, and audio recordings. I stared at it, thinking about burning it as a form of closure. But I didn't. I archived it, relabeled the box History, and placed it in the attic. Not to dwell on it, but to remind myself I survived. On January 15, 2026, the Arthur Brennan Special Needs Support Fund officially launched with a press release through the Arizona Autism Coalition. Applications opened immediately. In the very first week, 47 families submitted applications. The selection committee consisted of me, Mr. Wong, Aunt Rachel, and the director from Noah's former daycare. In February, we selected our first 12 recipients, awarding grants between $2,800 and $5,000 if hundreds based on need. The very first check was sent out on February 28th to Maria Gonzalez, a mother raising a 7-year-old nonverbal autistic girl named Sophia. Maria had been saving for 18 months and had managed to scrape together $1,900, but a speech device cost $2,800. We covered the remaining $2,600 gap. When I handed her the check, she burst into tears and hugged me tight. "I've been saving for so long. I was about to take on a second job. You just gave me my time back with my daughter. How can I ever thank you?" I cried right along with her. "You don't need to thank me. Just use that device so Sophia can find her voice. Your grandfather must have been an incredible man." "He was," I told her, "but he learned how to do this by watching me struggle. He wanted to make sure other families didn't have to go through what we went through." On March 10, 2026, I received a voicemail from an unknown number. I almost deleted it, but I listened instead. It was my mother's voice. "Florence, I heard about that scholarship fund you set up. That's really wonderful. I'm proud of you." I saved the voicemail. I didn't reply, and I didn't delete it. I just acknowledged its existence. She finally noticed me, in the 32nd year of my life. It was way too late, but she finally noticed. People often ask me if losing my family, enduring the endless fighting, the pain, and the public humiliation was worth it. They don't understand. I didn't lose my family because I never truly had them to begin with. All I had were titles: mom, dad, brother. But titles aren't love. Actions are love. And their actions were always clear. I was an obligation, Noah was a burden, and my grandfather was a payday. What I actually lost was the access those toxic people had to my life. What I gained was complete freedom from the people who kept hurting me. Those two things should never be confused. One is a loss, the other is liberation. I chose liberation, and it didn't cost me anything I actually owned. I learned that boundaries aren't cruel. They're honest. When I blocked my parents, I wasn't punishing them. I was protecting Noah and myself. Every time they reached out, every guilt trip, every manipulation drained energy I couldn't afford to waste. Energy that was meant for healing. A boundary isn't a wall to keep people out. It's a door, and I hold the power over who gets to walk through it. When my mother showed up crying on my doorstep, a small part of me wanted to let her in. That was the old me. The version of me programmed to manage her feelings and sacrifice myself to keep her comfortable. But the new me, the version who sat in a cold hospital chair for 108 hours while she drank margaritas, said, "No, not today. Not ever." I listened to the new me because the new me actually loves who I am. Noah doesn't speak many words, but he communicates everything. When he feels safe, he plays. When he feels scared, he hides. When he loves you, he sits right beside you. No touch, no words, just presence. He is completely, purely honest. No games, no manipulation. Just, this is how I feel. This is what I need. Take it or leave it. I realize that's how I want to live my life. With honesty and clarity. No more performing, no more shrinking, no more pleasing others at my own expense. My parents wanted me to be smaller, quieter, and more obedient. They wanted Noah to be normal. But normal is just a setting on a washing machine. It's not a prerequisite for love. Noah is exactly who he was meant to be, and so am I. A single mom raising an autistic son, inheriting $7.5 million because her grandfather saw her when no one else did. That is my normal, and it is more than enough. My grandfather left me $7.5 million, but that wasn't his true legacy. His real legacy was teaching me that love isn't a vacation you take whenever it's convenient. Love is showing up when it counts. Love is sitting in that cold hospital chair. Love is holding someone's hand when they're terrified. Love is writing consequences into legal contracts when words fall short. Love is protection. And real love never asks for anything in return. It just exists. 26 months before his stroke, my grandfather sat in my car on Thanksgiving Day while I was crying. He said, "I'm going to change some things, some legal things. You'll understand later. I didn't understand then, but I get it now." He wasn't just updating his will. He was rewriting my future. He was making sure that if I ever had to choose between standing my ground or being forced to give up, I would have the resources to keep standing. That is love. And that is what it truly means to leave a legacy. If my parents ever spend the rest of their lives wondering why they lost $4 million, I hope they remember that speakerphone call. I hope they remember the 12 people who heard them call me a burden. I hope they remember the nurses who documented every single detail. And I hope they remember that a retired federal judge, their own father, my grandfather, was listening to everything from right behind that door. Because justice isn't always loud and dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's a calm declaration that freezes an entire room in an instant. Sometimes it's a single signature on a legal document, and sometimes it's a loving grandfather deciding to make sure his granddaughter will never have to beg anyone for help ever again. That is what true inheritance feels like. Family isn't just the people who happen to share your blood. It's the people who choose to show up when things get tough. It's the people who see your child having a sensory meltdown and ask, "How can I help you?" instead of, "What did you do wrong?" It's the people willing to sit by your hospital bed for 108 hours. Because love is never just a line item you squeeze into your schedule whenever it's convenient. While everyone else chose the sunshine and beaches of Cabo, my grandfather chose me, and he chose Noah. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure that choice mattered. Not for the money, but because someone finally saw me. Finally, someone truly saw me. Sunday afternoon, March 30, 2026. We were playing checkers at my grandfather's condo. Noah won, for the very first time in his life. He jumped up, swaying happily back and forth, clapping his hands together. We both burst into tears, pure tears of happiness. Noah reached for his speech device and pressed 3 buttons in a row. Love, you, Grandpa, Mama. 3 words, the first time he had ever put them together into a complete thought. Dead silence filled the room. For 8 whole seconds, no one moved. I sobbed, completely overwhelmed. Say it again, buddy, I whispered. Noah pressed the buttons one more time. Love, you, Grandpa, Mama. Tears streamed down my grandfather's face. We love you too, Noah Bear, so much. I reached across the table and took my grandfather's hand. Noah placed his small hand right on top of ours. 3 generations, 3 hands. Chosen family. Real family. I whispered softly. We made it. My grandfather squeezed my hand. You made it. I just made sure you had the tools. No, I replied. You made sure I understood that I was worthy of those tools. There's a big difference. That means everything, he said quietly. And we just sat there, the 3 of us, hands stacked together. Noah hummed his quiet, happy hums while my grandfather smiled. And for the first time in 32 years, I finally took a breath of pure freedom. That is the true legacy. This moment, this love, and the undeniable proof that chosen family matters more than blood. That is what actually counts. Not the money, not the wills, not the revenge. Right here, we are safe. We are loved. We are home. And that is more than enough. In fact, that is everything.